Selah.
An intentional pause for reflection and connection.
Selah.
Content-rich dialogue and discussions.
Selah.
Pray and worship together.
Selah.
Living the way.
Selah.
Hello everyone, welcome to our February Selah experience. It is our hope and prayer that through Selah today, you will make friends, discover rest, and connect with God. Last month, we focused on fasting. Pastor Jordan shared that fasting brings us into alignment with God. And we hope that the topic was a blessing to your spiritual walk and spiritual journey. Today, we will focus on why Christianity is still for Black people in light of Black History Month. So, to begin our time together, I have a few questions for you and your group to discuss. The questions are: 1, share a personal achievement or milestone of a Black person that you find inspiring. 2, if you were to write a letter to future generations about the significance of Black history, what would you say? And 3, how has your culture inspired your spiritual journey? Go ahead and pause the video now with the questions on the screen and discuss your answers with your group. When you're done, unpause and join us for our teaching moment.
Christianity is a white man's religion. That's what he told me, and he was dead serious. You know that the place to find every street philosopher, unpublished poet, and unemployed politician is in the barbershop, on the corner. I wasn't even talking to this brother, but he found out that I was a preacher and began his angry rant against the church and its foundational involvement and full participation in the American slave trade. And I just listened as he ranted and didn't feel the need to reply, because sometimes it's not our job to correct or challenge, but just to listen. So I listened. And what I heard more than anything was pain. The pain that comes from trusting something bigger than you and being let down. The pain of feeling like you've been fooled by something you believed in or might have believed in. His pain was real, but unfortunately his conclusions were wrong. Many Black Christians in this country and around the world are in a season of rethinking their faith in terms of their cultural and racial identities. To put it bluntly, Black Christians are questioning if the Christianity they know has any place for them, or if it still holds any value for them in a world that does not really see them. Now, these are necessary questions, and there are many who have concluded that Christianity has no room for the Black experience or Black people. But I would beg to differ. As a Black man, as a Black Christian, in fact, history and biblical history proves otherwise. I want us to begin with biblical history, talk about our experiences as Black people, and then we'll look at historical references to help us understand why Christianity is still relevant for all people, including Black people. So let's start with Mark 15, verse 21. It reads this way: "And they compelled a passerby, Simon of Cyrene, who was coming in from the country, the father of Alexander and Rufus, to carry his cross." This Simon of Cyrene was from what we call today Libya, back then North Africa. Simon was identified in the Bible as an African. He was a person of color and today would be identified as a Black man. But perhaps more importantly, Simon from Cyrene was already a person of faith. We know he was a worshiper of Yahweh because he had come to Jerusalem for the feast of the Passover. Only worshipers of God participated in these holy festivals. So here we see an African man who already had faith in God and thus shared the same faith as the rest of the people who had gathered, who, by the way, were also people of color from the region we now call the Middle East, but is really Northern Africa. Africans had faith in the one true God before Simon encountered Jesus. What we must understand is that this African was forced to carry a burden that was not his. The Romans forced this African man to carry the cross for Jesus. This means that this black man of faith was made to carry the burden of another. And today, we experience the same kind of burden. We are made to carry the burden of being indifferent to injustice while waiting for Jesus to return. That's what westernized Christianity calls us to do. And this Simon was made to carry the cross, but he was not allowed to protest the injustice of what was happening. He was not part of the mob who cried, "Crucify him." And we know this because Mark would have mentioned that detail. We also know that Simon knew about Jesus because everyone in Jerusalem was talking about him. He wasn't in agreement with what was happening to Jesus, and yet he was forced to participate in his public death, his public lynching, if you will. He disagreed, but was forced to be agreeable. He had to carry the instrument of Christ's execution and not say a word about it. And this speaks to the unspoken expectation and desire that this westernized version of Christianity places an expectation on people of color to deal with injustice and be quiet about it. In other words, don't worry about this man being wrongly tried and convicted. You are here for the Passover, so just carry the cross and pass over this man's pain. And that's what we've been compelled to do, pass over our pain. It reminds me of when I was watching TV several years ago, and I happened to be watching Fox News. The lady on Fox News was talking about how LeBron James was standing up and speaking out, protesting, if you will, for something that had happened to black people in recent times. And as he was using his platform to speak to the injustice, she used this phrase, just shut up and dribble. And this whole issue of shut up and dribble really is also showing up in Christian spaces and in the Christian church. For when we want to speak to injustice and inequities and disparities, we're told to just shut up and pray, or shut up and believe, or shut up and worship. But this co-opting, this silencing of our pain is a dangerous thing. This African, Cyrene, was forced to carry the cross of someone who looked a lot like him. See, the whitewashing of Jesus has done a terrible disservice, not just to black people, but to all people and all believers. The most popular image of Jesus as a white European man was created by an artist by the name of Walter Salmon in his depiction called The Head of Christ. This follows the early works of Michelangelo and other artists who not only changed the skin color of our Lord, but also his facial features. Yet the book of Revelation describes the resurrected Lord with kinky hair and his feet as bronze. Jews of that time in history, just look it up, were people of color and certainly lived under the subjugation of Rome, which would make their experience very close to the experience of black people throughout the diaspora in every country around the world. This is why Dr. Howard Thurman, who once taught here in Atlanta at Morehouse College, proposed in his book entitled Jesus and the Disinherited, that the lived experience and cultural context of Jesus is most closely related to the experience of black people in America. Jesus was not white in any stretch of the imagination. In fact, let's look back at history. Dr. Michael Waters shared at the Jude 3 Project Symposium that up to the year 1790, Puritan understandings of the depictions of Jesus permeated the country, which meant, listen to this, there were no depictions of Christ in churches and places of worship up to that time of 1790. However, when the Naturalization Act of 1790 was proposed, it sought to limit access to U.S. citizenship only given to white male immigrants. It is only then that we begin to see the widespread pictures of white Jesus. Think of this. Why? They used the white Jesus depiction in order to give endorsement and justification to white citizenship only. Now, you might be asking, why does this even matter, Pastor Knight? Why are we talking about this? It doesn't matter what skin color Jesus is. And why does it matter what racial identity Jesus was? Well, I would ask you, why does it disturb so many people that Jesus may not be white? Why the reluctance to the overwhelming evidence that Jesus does not look like the images and pictures we've all seen? You have to ask yourself, why the thought makes you recoil or question the relevance of the discussion. But since you asked, let me answer the question that so many of you are asking. It matters because truth matters. And if we could lie about the color of his skin, we could certainly lie about who is valuable to him. And then we could lie about who deserves freedom and justice. And the lies can continue. See, it matters because truth has always mattered. Jesus is not white. Jesus is a man of color in the Middle Eastern area. Some would say Jesus is a black man, at least experientially. And if that's too strong for you because intellectual integrity would not allow you to impose this Western view of blackness on a Middle Eastern Jesus, then maybe you might even call him black-ish. One thing is clear. To all of us who actually read the Bible, who study theology beyond the European texts that fill our seminary libraries, Jesus is not white, and it matters. Because the whitewashing of Jesus has perpetuated the practice of white supremacy, stealing away our Savior and the church he built for all people, including black people. So, Simon of Cyrene, a man of color from Africa, carried the cross of Jesus, a man of color who was from Nazareth. So if Jesus and Christianity always included people of color from the very beginning, then what do we do now? Especially those who are questioning its relevance. Can I tell you what Simon did not do? He did not give up his faith because of what was done to him. The temptation for us is to walk away from the church or Christianity because of its abuses, its afflictions, or its contradictions. We feel like just leaving it all behind, especially when it was used to enslave our bodies, our families, and our minds. But if I may, I want to help you understand why we can't just walk away. Because we cannot abandon the faith of our ancestors. Our African ancestors, long before European and American chattel slavery, had their own faith in Yahweh. One of the greatest theologians of Christianity and Christian history is Tertullian. The first North African writer comes up with the theological term Trinitas, which helps us to understand as God being three in one. Cyprian, another great theologian, was African. Clement of Alexandria, African. Origen, African. Augustine, who was one of the most celebrated theologians of religious history, was African, who also, by the way, inspired Martin Luther's Reformation. But don't forget the sisters from Africa, because Perpetua and Felicity from Carthage in North Africa were foundational figures in Christianity in the early 200s. In fact, Perpetua is the first female Christian author, and she was from North Africa. If you walk away, you give up what is rightfully yours. Christianity is for everyone, but Christian doctrine does not belong historically or originally to everyone. Christian theology actually came out of Africa, then went to Europe. Understand that Simon of Cyrene did not keep the Roman's cross. He gave up the burden and would not walk away from his faith. You can't keep everything people put on you. Let me ask you the question. Is it the responsibility of Black people, Black Christians, to teach racists how to be non-racist? It's not our cross to carry. It is not the responsibility of Black people to teach bigots how to be authentic Christians. It's not our cross to carry. It is not the responsibility of Black people to define love as always being passive or non-confrontational and compliant. That's not our cross to carry. Simon gave the cross back. Accept the fact that you are above and not beneath, that we are equal at the foot of the cross. Accept the fact that your ancestors were not always enslaved, but were once and again kings and queens, presidents and princesses, chiefs and elders. Accept the fact that you are brilliant, creative, and resilient, made in the image of God. Accept the fact that you come from Mother Africa, and therefore you have a rich history of believing in Yahweh. You are not just anybody. You are somebody. And when they try to make you carry the cross of assimilation, European respectability, or cultural compliance, give them their cross back, but keep your Christian faith. It doesn't belong to just one identity or ethnicity or culture or group. It belongs to everybody. So here's what I want you to understand. Here's the key. Simon gave them back their cross, but he didn't walk away from his faith. Why? He'd invested too much to walk away. How could he just walk away? He believed in Yahweh. For example, Black people in America cannot go back to Africa en masse because our blood is in this soil. We've invested too much here. We aren't going anywhere because there's too much blood spilled here, too much sacrifice put in here, too much work put in here. And the same thing goes for your Christianity. Too much blood has been spilled for us to just walk away because of how some Christians treat us. You are made of stronger stuff than that. And the legacy of Black people in this country and wherever Africans were dispersed has always been a legacy of faith. In the Black History Month that we are now in, it's a time to reimagine our faith in Jesus. Let's hold fast to the faith that our ancestors gave us. Let us hold fast to the faith that carried us through chattel slavery, Reconstruction, lynching after Sunday church, Jim Crow segregation, and all the eras of oppression. Let us hold fast to the faith that we had long before they showed up on our shores to steal us away from our homeland. Christianity belongs to the liberator and the liberated. And my hope for you this year is that your faith will not fail you even when nations and policies do. May we forever stand true to our God, true to our native land, and let it be so.
Thank you, Pastor Knight, for teaching us about Black history and how it intimately relates to Christianity. God is deeply acquainted with, associated with, and related with you. He's not a distant God who's only for people wealthier than you, a different skin color than you, a different gender than you, a different culture than you. He's personally connected to you. He understands your feelings, and you were created in the image of God. Now, hearing those final words, may we forever stand true to our God, true to your God, true to my God, true to our native land. Those final words made me start humming the Black national anthem, Lift Every Voice and Sing. How about you? What stood out to you during the teaching? We invite you to think about the following questions and discuss them in your group. 1. What concepts stood out to you the most from today's teaching? 2. Have you felt that Christianity was for white people? If so, how has it made you feel? 3. How does hearing the words, Jesus was not a white man, resonate for you? Does it shift your perspective? And 4. What cross have you been forced to carry that you are giving back and declaring that's not your cross? So take a moment and pause the video, give yourself a moment to think, and then share how you connect with these questions. If you have your journal, write down these challenges for the week, or if not, take a picture of it with your phone. Today's challenges are: 1. You may encounter someone this week who seems to have a huge chip on their shoulder about Christianity or something else entirely. Maybe this is someone you interact with regularly already. Say a prayer for them, knowing that they are experiencing pain within. Ask God for an opportunity to say something encouraging to them. 2. Perhaps there's a cross you are carrying that's not your own and you want to get rid of it. Maybe it's your roommate's problems, societal pressures, or even hereditary issues being passed down. Pray that God will free you from this, and that as you walk into a new month, you will experience a newness of life that only Jesus can give. So take a moment to pause and pray for each other as you share how you will engage with the challenge. We hope that you have been blessed today in your Selah experience. You can support this ministry and Revision Church Atlanta by giving through PayPal or on our website at revisionchurchatlanta.org/give. Thank you so much for your generous gifts. Your donations make Selah possible. Thank you for being with us today, and we look forward to seeing you next month right here for Selah. We'll see you next time, and may God continue to richly bless you.